Jai Yun's heart beat faster as she walked through the gleaming hallways of the Galactic Academy of Military Sciences. The space station's artificial gravity felt a bit stronger today, or maybe it was just her nerves making her steps heavy. It was the first day of her third year, and she had finally made it into the advanced combat theory classes she had dreamed about since joining the academy. The classroom doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was already half full with students from 12 different species. Some had scales, others had feathers, and a few glowed with bioluminescent patterns. Jai Yun smoothed down her dark blue uniform and found a seat near the front, setting up her data pad with practiced ease. That's when she noticed the human. They weren't completely rare at the academy, but this one was different. While other humans usually clustered together in loud groups, this student sat alone in the corner. Their uniform was perfectly pressed, and their posture was straight, but somehow trying not to be noticed. The name tag read Hansol, and unlike the excited chatter from other students, they sat in complete silence, eyes fixed on a point somewhere far away. Professor Dax, a tall centurion with silver skin, walked into the room. His forearms moved quickly as he brought up the day's lesson on the huge screen behind him. "Welcome to Advanced Combat Theory," he said, his translator making his voice sound smooth and deep. "Today we begin with the most important battle of our time, the Nexus War." Jai Yun sat up straighter. The Nexus War had ended just 5 years ago, when she was still in basic school. It had changed everything about how the galaxy worked, especially after humans joined the fight and helped turn the tide. "Can anyone tell me the key factors that led to the Alliance victory?" Professor Dax asked. Jai Yun's hand shot up immediately. She had studied this. The Alliance won because they used better technology and had more ships, she said confidently. "An obvious answer," Professor Dax said, making Jai Yun's face heat up, "but not entirely correct." A quiet voice spoke from the corner. "They won because they were willing to try new things." Everyone turned to look at Hansol. It was the first time they had spoken. Their voice was soft but sure. "Interesting," Professor Dax said, his silver skin shimmering with interest. "Please explain." Hansol seemed to shrink a little under the attention but continued. "The Alliance was losing until they started listening to new ideas. They stopped fighting like they always had and learned to be unpredictable." The way they said it made Jai Yun feel strange, like Hansol wasn't just reciting facts from a book, but telling a story they knew by heart. Professor Dax nodded slowly. "Correct. The Alliance's willingness to adapt and embrace unconventional tactics, particularly those introduced by human commanders, was crucial to their victory." The lesson continued, but Jai Yun found herself watching Hansol instead of taking notes. Every time the professor mentioned a battle or strategy, Hansol's hands would tighten slightly on their desk. When they showed videos of famous fights, Hansol would look down at their data pad, as if they couldn't watch. At the end of class, Professor Dax announced their first assignment. "You will work in pairs to analyze a major battle from the war. Your partners have been randomly assigned." Jai Yun held her breath as the pairs appeared on screen. Her eyes widened when she saw her name next to Hansol's. As students began to leave, Jai Yun gathered her courage and walked over to Hansol's desk. "Hello," she said brightly. "I guess we're partners." Hansol looked up, and for a moment, Jai Yun saw something in their eyes, something old and tired that didn't belong in a student's face, but it vanished so quickly she thought she might have imagined it. "Yes," Hansol said quietly. "I look forward to working together." As they packed up their things, Jai Yun noticed Hansol's hands. They moved with perfect efficiency, no motion wasted, like someone who had packed up in a hurry many times before. And there, just visible at the edge of their sleeve, was a hint of scarred skin. Jai Yun felt a shiver run down her spine. She didn't know why, but something told her this quiet human was going to change everything she thought she knew about the war. And herself. She just didn't know how right she was. Jai Yun stood outside the academy's library, checking her datapad again. Han Sol had picked this spot for their first project meeting. She was 15 minutes early, but Han Sol was already there, sitting on a bench with perfect posture, reading something on their own pad. "You're early," Jai Yun said with a smile. "Being late wastes time," Han Sol replied simply. "And time can mean everything in battle." Jai Yun blinked at the strange answer. It sounded more like something a commander would say, not a student. But before she could think about it more, Han Sol was already walking into the library. The library was huge, with tall windows showing the stars outside. Most students used the digital archives, but Han Sol walked straight to the physical book section. They picked out several old military books with practiced ease, as if they had read them many times before. "These will help," Han Sol said, setting the books down. "Professor Dax assigned us the Battle of New Seoul. It was important." Something in Han Sol's voice made Jai Yun look up. Their face was calm, but their hands were gripping the book too tightly. "I studied this battle," Jai Yun said proudly. The Alliance was losing until they used a new strategy. They sent small ships through the enemy's blind spots. Han Sol shook their head slightly. "That's what the basic books say. But it's not the whole truth." They opened one of the books and pointed to a diagram. "Look, the enemy ships were here, here, and here. The books say the Alliance commander found their blind spots by accident. But that's wrong." Jai Yun leaned closer as Han Sol's finger traced lines across the page. Their explanation was clear and simple, but it showed a deep understanding that went far beyond what any student should know. The commander had studied ancient Earth-sea battles, Han Sol continued, their voice getting quieter. They knew that sometimes the best path forward is through the middle of danger, not around it. "How do you know all this?" Jai Yun asked. Han Sol went still for a moment. "I'd read a lot." Just then, a group of senior students walked by their table. One of them, a tall Arcturian with blue scales, stopped and looked at Han Sol with disgust. "Look who it is," he said loudly. "The human who thinks they understand war. Your species barely learned to leave their planet before the Nexus War. What could you possibly teach us?" Jai Yun expected Han Sol to get angry or upset. Instead, they simply nodded and looked down at their book. This seemed to make the Arcturian even angrier. "Hey, I'm talking to you." Han Sol finally looked up. Their eyes were calm, but somehow different, older, harder. The Arcturian took a small step back. "You're right," Han Sol said quietly. "Humans are new to space. We have much to learn. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're working on our project." The Arcturian opened his mouth to say more, but one of his friends pulled him away. As they left, Jai Yun heard them whispering about strange humans and thinking they're special. "That wasn't fair," Jai Yun said. "You shouldn't let them talk to you like that." Han Sol's face softened a little. "Words don't win wars, Jai Yun. Actions do." They paused, then added, "Besides, sometimes it's better if people underestimate you." They spent the next 2 hours working. Jai Yun was amazed at how Han Sol could explain complex battle strategies in simple ways, but she also noticed other things. How they always sat facing the door, how their eyes regularly scanned the room, how they seemed to know exactly where every person in the library was at all times. When they finished for the day, Jai Yun watched Han Sol pack up their things with that same efficient movement she had noticed before. "Han Sol," she said suddenly, were you there during the war?" Han Sol's hands stopped moving for just a second. "Everyone was somewhere during the war," they said carefully. "The important thing is where we are now." As Jai Yun watched them walk away, she knew 2 things for certain. First, Han Sol was definitely hiding something big, and second, she was going to find out what it was. Jai Yun couldn't sleep. Han Sol's words about the Battle of New Seoul kept running through her mind. She got out of bed and grabbed her datapad. The Academy's library had a night section that was always open. Maybe she could find more information there. The night section was empty except for a sleepy security drone. Jia-yun walked past the main archives to the military records section. She had been here many times before, but tonight she went deeper, to the classified section that only third-year students could access. Her fingers moved across the screen as she searched for more details about the Battle of New Seoul. A file caught her eye. Emergency transmission log. New Seoul Defense. She opened it and started reading. The log showed messages from the battle. Many were basic orders and responses, but one conversation stood out. It was marked High Command Emergency Channel. Ghost of Seoul, you can't take your fleet through there. It's suicide. Trust me, we make our own path. But sometimes the best path is through the middle of danger, not around it. Jia-yun's heart jumped. Those were the exact words Han Sol had used in the library. She read more quickly now. The next part of the log showed how a small human fleet had done something impossible. They had flown straight through the enemy formation, causing chaos and confusion. The move had changed the whole battle. She searched for more files about the Ghost of Seoul. Most were locked, but she found some battle footage. Her hands shook as she played the first video. The screen showed a command room during the battle. Most of the officers were running around, but one person stood calmly in the middle, giving clear orders. They were human, wearing an Alliance uniform with captain's marks. The video quality wasn't very good, but something about the way they stood. Jia-yun played another video. This one showed the same captain in a different battle. They were walking through a damaged ship, helping injured crew members. When they reached the bridge, they started giving orders in the same quiet, sure way that Han Sol explained things. The next file was marked Classified, Command Interview. The video showed the same captain sitting at a desk. The picture was clearer now. Jia-yun gasped. The captain was younger than she had expected, maybe 19 or 20. Their face was tired but determined. And even though this video was 5 years old, Jia-yun knew that face. She saw it every day in class. It was Han Sol. The video continued. An officer was speaking. Captain, your actions saved not just New Seoul, but possibly the entire war effort. How did you know it would work? Han Sol in the video looked down at their hands. They were burned and bandaged. I didn't know, but sometimes you have to risk everything to save what matters. The Alliance wants to promote you, make you a symbol of human bravery. No, Han Sol's voice was firm. I don't want promotions or medals. Too many good people died following my orders. I just want. The video cut off there. Jia-yun sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Han Sol wasn't just any soldier from the war. They were the Ghost of Seoul, the mysterious human captain who had changed the course of the biggest battle in the war. But why were they here at the academy? Why were they pretending to be just another student? A noise made her jump. The security drone was coming closer. Jia-yun quickly closed all the files and cleared her search history. As she walked back to her room, her steps felt heavy. Now she understood why Han Sol always sat facing the door, why they moved like someone used to danger, why they knew so much about battles but tried to hide it. They weren't here to learn about war. They were trying to forget it. Jia-yun lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. What should she do with this information? Should she tell Han Sol what she knew? Would that make them run away? One thing was certain. She would never look at her quiet project partner the same way again. The next few days were hard for Jia-yun. Every time she looked at Han Sol, she saw the young captain from the videos. She noticed more things now. Little details that made so much sense. They were working in the library again when Jia-yun checked Han Sol's student file on her datapad. The entry date was exactly 1 month after the war ended. The same time the Ghost of Seoul had disappeared from all military records. Is something wrong? Han Sol asked, looking up from their work. You've been quiet today. Jia-yun quickly closed the file. Just thinking about the project, she lied. Can you help me understand this battle formation? Han Sol reached for her datapad. That's when Jai-yun saw it clearly. The burned scars on their hands. They were exactly like the ones from the video, just older now. Han Sol caught her looking and quickly pulled their sleeves down. The scars, Jai-yun said softly. They're from the war, aren't they? Han Sol went very still. Many people have scars from the war, but not many people have them from commanding a ship through a burning enemy fleet. The words came out before Jai-yun could stop them. Han Sol's face didn't change, but their eyes showed fear for just a second. I don't know what you mean, they said carefully. I think you do. Jai-yun took a deep breath. I found the videos. I know who you are. Ghost of Seoul. Han Sol stood up so quickly their chair almost fell. They looked around the library, checking if anyone had heard. Then they grabbed their things and walked out quickly. Jai-yun ran after them. Wait, I won't tell anyone. Han Sol didn't stop until they reached an empty study room. They went inside and closed the door. Jai-yun followed. How much do you know? Han Sol asked. Their voice was different now, harder, more like the captain from the videos. I know you saved New Seoul, Jai-yun said. I know you were the youngest fleet captain ever. I know you disappeared after the war instead of taking honors and promotions. Han Sol sat down heavily. They suddenly looked very tired. Do you know how many people died that day? They asked quietly. Following my orders, they trusted me because I was their captain. Some were older than my parents. Jai-yun sat down too. But you saved the city. You won the battle. Winning doesn't bring dead people back. Han Sol looked at their scarred hands. I came here to start over, to learn how to be normal again. Please, don't take that away from me. For the first time, Jai-yun saw real emotion in Han Sol's face. They looked scared and sad and tired all at once. I won't tell anyone, Jai-yun promised. But can you tell me about it? The real story, not the one in the books. Han Sol was quiet for a long time. Finally, they nodded slowly. It wasn't like the stories say, they began. We were losing badly. The enemy ships were everywhere. I was so scared, but I couldn't show it. Everyone was looking at me for answers. They talked for hours. Han Sol told Jai-yun about the fear, the hard choices, the weight of command. They explained how it felt to be 19 and responsible for thousands of lives. When they finished, it was dark outside the station's windows. Thank you for telling me, Jai-yun said. Thank you for listening, Han Sol replied. It's been a long time since I could talk about it. Just then, their data pads beeped with a message. It was from Professor Dax. Tomorrow's class will include a practical combat exercise. All students must participate. Jai-yun saw Han Sol's face change. The old fear was back in their eyes. Are you okay? She asked. Combat exercises can go wrong, Han Sol said quietly. And when things go wrong in combat, they didn't finish the sentence. They didn't have to. Jai-yun understood now. Han Sol wasn't afraid of fighting. They were afraid of having to lead again, of being responsible for others. She just hoped tomorrow's exercise would be simple and safe. She was wrong. The combat training room was huge. 30 students stood in their practice uniforms, holding training weapons that were supposed to be harmless. The room could create solid holograms for them to fight against. Jai-yun watched Han Sol from the corner of her eye. They stood perfectly still, but their eyes kept moving, checking every exit. Today's exercise is simple, Professor Dax announced. You will work in teams to defend against a simulated attack. The weapons are set to training mode. They will only give a small shock if they hit you. The room changed around them. Now they were standing in what looked like a space station hallway. Jai-yun found herself in a team with Han Sol and 3 other students. Remember, Professor Dax's voice came over the speakers. This is just practice. Work together and... Suddenly, all the lights turned red. A different voice came through the speakers. Warning. System malfunction. Safety protocols disabled. Han Sol's head snapped up. Everyone down, they shouted. A laser blast hit the wall where Jai Yun's head had been a second before. It left a black burn mark. These weren't training weapons anymore. They were real. Panic broke out. Students started running and screaming. More laser blasts came from the training robots, which were now acting like real enemy soldiers. We need to shut it down, Professor Dax shouted from somewhere. But the control room is locked. Han Sol's whole body changed. They stood straighter, and their voice became stronger. Jai Yun saw the ghost of Sul from the videos, giving orders with calm confidence. "Listen to me," Han Sol called out. Everyone stopped and turned. Something in their voice made people want to obey. "Form teams of 4. Protect your backs. We need to reach the control room." "Why should we listen to you?" someone shouted. A laser blast hit right between them. Han Sol moved with amazing speed, pulling 2 students to safety. "Because I've done this before," they said firmly. "And I won't let anyone die today." Maybe it was their voice or the way they moved, but everyone started following Han Sol's orders. They organized the students into groups, showing them how to use the hallway walls for cover. "Jai Yun," Han Sol called, "you're with me. You know tactics. I need you to think like the enemy. Where would you put guards?" Jai Yun's mind raced through her studies. The main hallway and the maintenance tunnel. Good. Han Sol turned to the others. "Team 1, create a distraction in the main hall. Team 2, guard our back. Team 3, with us. We're taking the maintenance tunnel." Everyone moved quickly now. Han Sol led them through the station, avoiding most of the robots. When they had to fight, they moved like a dancer, every action perfect and planned. They disabled robots with single shots, taught students how to duck and roll, and kept everyone calm with their steady voice. They reached the control room door. It was locked with a security code. "I can't hack this," one student said. "You don't have to," Han Sol replied. They shot the control panel in exactly the right spot, and the door slid open. Inside, they found the main computer. While Han Sol guarded the door, Jai Yun and another student worked on the controls. Finally, they got the system back to normal. The robots shut down, and the real lights came back on. Everyone was safe. Scared, but not hurt. They all stared at Han Sol, who was checking each student for injuries with practiced care. "Who are you?" Professor Dax asked quietly. Han Sol stood up straight. For a moment, they looked like they might run. Then they saw Jai Yun's encouraging smile and took a deep breath. I was the ghost of Sul," they said. The room went completely quiet. Everyone had heard that name. The hero captain. The legend who disappeared. "Impossible," someone whispered. "The ghost would be my age," Han Sol said with a sad smile. "I was younger then than most of you are now." Professor Dax bowed deeply, all 4 of his arms crossed. "We owe you our lives." Again. Han Sol shook their head. "No, today we worked together. Everyone did their part." They looked at Jai Yun. Sometimes the best strength is the people around you. But Jai Yun could see in their eyes that things would never be the same. Han Sol's secret was out. Now everyone would know who they really were. The question was, what would happen next? After the exercise, nobody saw Han Sol for 2 days. They didn't come to class. Their room was empty. Jai Yun was worried they had run away again. Then she got a message on her data pad. "Meet me on observation deck C." The observation deck was quiet at night. Han Sol stood by the big window, looking at the stars. They wore simple clothes instead of their uniform. A small bag sat by their feet. "Are you leaving?" Jai Yun asked. "I was going to," Han Sol admitted. "I packed my bag 3 times. But I'm tired of running." They sat down on a bench, and Jai Yun joined them. For a while, They just watched the stars together. I was 19, Hansel finally said. Just a junior officer on a small ship. But I had studied old Earth battles since I was little. When the captain was killed, I was the only one who had an idea how to fight back. So you took command? Hansel nodded. They were desperate enough to listen to me. We won that battle. Then the next one. Soon, they made me captain of the whole fleet. They looked down at their hands. I was still 19, giving orders to people who had been in space longer than I'd been alive. Were you scared? Jae-yun asked. Every second, Hansol said quietly. But a captain can't show fear. So I pretended to be brave until sometimes I actually felt brave. They smiled a little. The ghost of Seoul wasn't real, you know. It was just a scared teenager trying not to get everyone killed. But you saved so many people, Jae-yun said. You're a hero. Heroes don't see their friends die. Hansol's voice was heavy with sadness. After the war, they wanted to give me medals, make speeches about the brave young captain. But all I could think about were the people who didn't come home. The families who lost someone because of my orders. Jae-yun understood now. That's why you came here. To start over. Yes. I thought if I could just be a normal student, maybe I could learn who I am without the war. Hansol looked around the empty deck. But now everyone knows. Is that so bad? Jae-yun asked. You don't have to hide anymore. I'm not hiding from them, Hansol said. I'm hiding from myself. From the person I had to be during the war. They turned to face Jae-yun. Do you know what it's like to make a choice that kills good people? To give an order knowing some of your friends won't come back? Jae-yun shook her head. I do. Every night in my dreams, I do it again. Hansol's eyes were far away. I was so young. We all were. But war doesn't care how old you are. Jae-yun reached out and touched Hansol's scared hand. But you're not alone anymore. You helped us today. You're still protecting people, just in a different way. Hansol looked at their joined hands. During the war, I never had friends, just people who followed orders. But you saw me as a person first, not a legend. Because that's who you are, Jae-yun said firmly. You're not just the ghost of Seoul. You're Hansol, my friend who helps me study and worries too much and has the neatest handwriting in class. For the first time since Jae-yun had known them, Hansol laughed. It was a small laugh, but real. Maybe you're right, they said. Maybe it's time to stop running. To be both people, the student and the soldier. We'll figure it out together, Jae-yun promised. They sat there for a long time, watching the stars and talking about simple things, favorite foods, funny stories, dreams for the future. With each word, Hansol seemed to relax a little more. But both of them knew this peaceful moment wouldn't last. Soon, the whole academy would be talking about the legendary ghost of Seoul, and not everyone would be happy to have a war hero in their class. The hard part was just beginning. News spread fast on a space station. By morning, everyone knew that the ghost of Seoul was at the academy. Hansol could feel the stares as they walked to class. Behind them, people whispered and pointed. Just ignore them, Jae-yun said, walking beside them. She had started meeting Hansol before class each morning, like a shield against all the attention. They'd walked into the classroom together. Everyone went quiet. Some students looked scared, others excited. The Arcturian who had been mean to Hansol in the library now couldn't meet their eyes. Professor Dax started the lesson, but nobody was really listening. They were all watching Hansol, waiting to see what the legendary captain would do. But Hansol just took notes quietly, like always. After class, a group of first-year students waited by the door. Is it true? One of them asked Hansol, did you really fly your ship through a burning enemy fleet? Were you scared? Another one said, can you teach us battle tactics? Hansol stepped back, looking uncomfortable. Jae-yun saw their hands shake a little. Sorry, Hansol said quietly. I have to study." They turned quickly and walked away. The young students looked disappointed. "Give them space," Jae-yun told the group. "Those memories aren't easy." But it kept happening. Every day, more people wanted to talk to Hansol. Military officers started visiting the academy, asking questions about why a war hero was hiding as a student. "This isn't good," Jae-yun said one day in the library. "Those officers keep asking about you." Hansol nodded. "The Alliance never liked that I disappeared. They wanted to use me as a symbol, to show how humans helped win the war. But that was years ago." "War stories are powerful," Hansol said. "A young captain who saved a city. People love stories like that." They looked tired. They don't want to hear about the hard parts, the fear, the cost. Just then, Jae-yun's data pad beeped. It was a news alert. Her eyes went wide as she read it. "Hansol, you're on the news. Someone leaked your student file. They're calling you the hidden hero of the Alliance." Hansol closed their eyes. It's starting again. Over the next few days, things got worse. Reporters tried to get into the academy. More officials arrived, wanting to talk to Hansol. Some students started treating Hansol differently, either staying far away or trying too hard to be friends. "You could talk to them," one teacher suggested. "Tell your story." "My story," Hansol said. "My story is about watching good people die. About being too young to deal with that much death. That's not the story they want to hear." Jae-yun watched her friend suffer under all the attention. She saw how Hansol ate alone, avoided crowded places, and jumped at sudden noises. The confident captain from the combat exercise was gone, replaced by someone who just wanted to hide. Then one morning, she had an idea. "We need help," she told Hansol. "And I know where to get it." She sent messages to all the students who had been in the combat exercise. The ones who had seen Hansol, not as a legend, but as a leader who protected them. They met in a quiet study room. 20 students, all wearing their academy uniforms. "Hansol saved us," Jae-yun told the group. "Now it's our turn to help them." The students looked at each other, then nodded. They started making plans. Some would keep reporters away. Others would stop people from bothering Hansol in class. A few would even spread different stories about the combat exercise, making it seem less dramatic. "You don't have to do this," Hansol said, looking surprised at all the help. "Yes, we do," said the Arcturian who had once been mean to them. "You taught us something important. Real leadership isn't about being famous. It's about protecting people." For the first time in days, Hansol smiled a little. But Jae-yun still worried. She knew bigger challenges were coming. The Alliance wouldn't give up easily on their lost hero. The question was, how long could they keep Hansol safe? The Academy's main hall was full of important people. Alliance generals wore their best uniforms. News reporters held their cameras ready. Everyone waited for Hansol to arrive. Jae-yun found Hansol in their usual quiet spot on the observation deck. "The Academy head wants to see you," she said softly. "They found out everything." Hansol didn't look surprised. "I knew they would. You can't hide forever." They walked together to the head's office. Inside, 3 people waited. The Academy head, an Alliance general, and an older human woman Jae-yun didn't know. "Captain Hansol," the general said, standing up straight. "Or should I say, the ghost of Seoul." "Just Hansol is fine," they replied quietly. The Academy head looked serious. "Why didn't you tell us who you were when you applied?" "Because I wanted to learn," Hansol said, "not be a symbol." The older woman stepped forward. Jae-yun noticed she wore a pin showing she had lost family in the war. "Do you know how many families never knew what happened to their loved ones? How many people needed a hero to look up to?" Hansol's hands shook slightly. "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who did what they had to do." "Exactly," the general said. "That's why we need you. Young people need to see that ordinary humans can do extraordinary things." Jae-yun watched her friend's face. Hansol looked trapped, like they wanted to run again. The academy head spoke again. The Alliance wants you to leave the academy. They want you to be an official war hero. Give speeches, train officers, be the legend everyone thinks you are. And if I say no, Hansol asked, then the media will keep coming. Stories will keep spreading. You'll never have peace here. Jia couldn't stay quiet anymore. That's not fair. Hansol has the right to live their own life. Jia, Hansol said gently. It's okay. They turned to face the others. Can I have 1 day to think about it? The general nodded. 1 day. But remember, legends don't belong in classrooms. Outside the office, Hansol leaned against the wall. What should I do, Jia? What do you want to do? I want. Hansol stopped, thinking. I want to help people, but not by being some perfect hero in a story. I want to show them the truth, that war isn't glorious, that sometimes being brave means being scared, but doing the right thing anyway. Jia had an idea. She sent messages to all their friends from class. Soon, students started arriving. Not just the ones who had been in the combat exercise, but others too. They filled the hallway, waiting to help. The academy head is wrong, Jia told Hansol. You don't have to choose between hiding and being a legend. There's another way. She turned to the gathered students. Who here has learned something from Hansol? Not about war, but about leadership, about caring for others. Hands went up everywhere. Students started speaking. They taught me that real strength is protecting others. They showed us how to stay calm in danger. They never acted better than us, even though they were a war hero. More students came, filling the hallway. Even the Arcturian spoke up. I was wrong about humans. Hansol showed me that wisdom doesn't come from how long you've been in space. It comes from what you've learned and how you use it. Hansol looked at all the faces. You really mean that? We'll help you, Jia said. You can stay here, be a student, but also share what you know. Not as a legend, but as yourself. The real you. For a long moment, Hansol was quiet. Then they stood up straighter, looking more like the captain they used to be. Get everyone together, they said. All the students, teachers, reporters, everyone. I have something to say. Jia smiled. She knew Hansol had made their choice. Tomorrow would change everything. But this time, they wouldn't face it alone. The academy's main hall had never been so full. Students, teachers, reporters, and military officials all stood waiting. Jia watched from the front row as Hansol walked to the speaking platform. They weren't wearing a military uniform or even their academy uniform, just simple clothes like they wore every day. But they stood tall, looking at everyone with clear, calm eyes. My name is Hansol, they began. Yes, I was the ghost of Seoul, but that's not who I am anymore. That's not all I am. The room was completely quiet. Even the reporters stopped taking pictures. Everyone wants to hear about the glory of war, Hansol continued, about the brave young captain who saved a city. But that's not the real story. They held up their scared hands. The real story is about fear, about being too young to handle so much death, about watching friends die and having to keep going anyway. Some of the generals looked uncomfortable. This wasn't the heroic speech they wanted. I came to this academy to learn, Hansol said, not just about war, but about peace, about leading without having to fight. And you know what? I learned more from my classmates than they learned from me. They smiled at Jia and their other friends. So no, I won't leave. I won't be your perfect hero. Instead, I'm going to stay and teach. Not about winning battles, but about preventing them, about understanding each other so we don't have to fight. The Alliance general stood up. Captain, the military needs you. The military needs what I can teach, Hansol replied firmly, about how war affects young soldiers, about how to lead with care, not just courage. And I can do that better here, as a teacher, than as a symbol. The academy head stepped forward. "What are you proposing?" "Let me start a new class," Hansol said. "Not just about combat, but about the real costs of war, about how to be strong without hurting others, about leading with wisdom instead of just orders." They looked around the room. "My students won't just learn battle tactics. They'll learn how to talk to different species, how to solve problems without fighting, how to care for their people." Jai Yun saw something change in the room. The reporters were writing quickly. The students were nodding. Even some of the military officers looked thoughtful. "I won't hide anymore," Hansol continued. "But I won't be your legend either. I'll be something better. A teacher who tells the truth about war and peace." They turned to the Alliance General. "You wanted me to inspire young people. This is how I'll do it. Not with glory stories, but with honest lessons about what really matters in leadership." The general was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Maybe that's exactly what we need." After the speech, things changed quickly. The academy created a new course, Leadership and Peace Studies, taught by Hansol. Students from all years signed up, eager to learn from someone who had seen both sides of war. Jai Yun helped Hansol plan their lessons. Together, they created classes that taught real leadership, not just how to win battles, but how to prevent them. "You know what's funny?" Hansol said one day, watching their students practice conflict resolution. "I came here to forget who I was. Instead, I found out who I could be." Jai Yun smiled. "You're still a legend, just a different kind now." Hansol's class became famous across the galaxy, but not for war stories. It was known for teaching young leaders how to be strong and kind at the same time, how to be brave without being cruel, how to lead with their hearts as well as their minds. And if sometimes, late at night, Hansol still had bad dreams about the war, they weren't alone anymore. They had friends who understood, students who cared, and a purpose that gave meaning to all they had been through. The ghost of Seoul was still a legend, but Hansol had become something more important, themselves. "Ready for class?" Jai Yun asked, holding the door open. Hansol looked at their students waiting inside. Young people from dozens of species, all ready to learn about peace instead of war. "Yes," they said, smiling. "I'm ready." The end.